Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is about love. Love is the most important ingredient in any relationship. I believe that your quality of life is directly linked to the amount of love that flows in you and through you. So today we are discussing a book that I really love, The 5 Love Languages. This book was written by Chapman. This man is a champion. He is a master of love and marriage counseling. The honeymoon love eventually runs out for all couples. So no matter what, then reality sets in and couples start to feel their relationships break down. They miss out on the second stage of their love, which is love is a choice. Love is a way of thinking. It takes discipline to love. Most of us grow up learning our parents' language, which becomes our primary or native language. We understand and speak best that language. Then later on we may learn additional languages, but usually with much more effort. And this becomes our secondary language. But the more we use a secondary language, the more comfortable we become talking it. If we speak only our primary language and we encounter someone who speaks only their primary language, then our communication will become limited. No matter how hard you try to express love in Xitsonga, if your spouse only understands Japanese, then you will never understand how to love each other. And that is exactly the same with love. Love has a language, and Gary has concluded that there are only 5 emotional love languages. The first love language is words of affirmation. One way to express love emotionally is to use words that build up, giving verbal compliment and using kind words. Psychologist William James said that possibly the deepest human need is the need to feel appreciated. And that is what words of affirmation is. Verbal compliments are far greater motivators than nagging words. You look beautiful today in that dress. You work so hard, my love. I really appreciate you. I see you took time making this meal. It's delicious. That is what words of affirmation is. Mark Twain once said that I can live for 2 months on a good compliment. There are some people, no matter what you give them or how much you keep the house clean and the keys in order, they don't really respond because it's not their love language. But through a good compliment, words of affirmation, then they feel loved, and that's because their love language is words of affirmation. Guys, words are important. I encourage you to set a goal to give your spouse a different compliment for each day for a month and see how your relationship improves. If an apple a day keeps the doctor away, maybe a compliment a day can keep the fire in your relationship burning. Now, the second love language is quality time. And by quality time, I mean giving someone your undivided attention. Sitting on the couch with the TV off and looking at each other and talking. It means taking a walk and just the two of you talking and eating, being together, looking at each other and just being together. Have you ever noticed in a restaurant, you can almost always tell the difference between dating couples and married couples? Dating couples look at each other and talk, whereas married couples sit there and they gaze around the restaurant. You'd think they're just there to eat the food. It isn't enough to be in the same room with someone. The key ingredient is giving your spouse quality, undivided attention, especially now in the era of many distractions. Many couples think that spending quality time is when they are there and they're in the same room. No, that's just living in close proximity. Well, they're in the same house at the same time and they are not together. If I'm talking to you and you're texting or you're on Twitter or you're on Instagram, then you're not giving quality time because I don't have your full attention. Most people who complain that their partner does not talk to them, they don't mean literally that he or she never say a word. They mean that he or she seldom engages in a sympathetic dialogue where they are sharing their experiences, their thoughts, their feelings, their desires in a friendly, uninterrupted context. Now let's move to the third love language, and that is receiving gifts. Gifts are visual symbols of love. Mothers remember the days their children bring a flower from the garden as a gift. From early years, children are inclined to give gifts to their parents, which may be another indication that gift giving is fundamental to love. Gift comes in all sizes, shapes, and colors. Some are expensive and others are free. To the individual whose primary love language is receiving gifts, the cost of the gift will matter little unless it is greatly out of line with what you can afford. If a millionaire, for instance, gives you R100 gift, then the spouse may question whether it is an expression of love. But to a family whose finances are limited, R100 gift may speak $1 million worth of love. Gifts may be purchased, they may be found, they may be made. A husband who finds an interesting feather while jogging and brings it home to his wife has found himself an expression of love, unless, of course, the wife is allergic to feathers. But for a man who can afford it, a bouquet of flowers can mean the world. For a man who cannot afford a bouquet of flowers, a simple paper, you fold it in half, you take scissors and you cut a heart out and you write "I love you" and sign your name, then that could be it. Gifts don't need to be expensive. Guys, don't wait for Valentine's or birthdays to give gifts to your loved one. If receiving gifts is your partner's primary love language, then almost anything that you give them will be received as an expression of love. But what about a person who says, "I'm not a gift giver. I have not really received many gifts growing up"? Well, my friend, congratulations. You have just made it to your first discovery, and that is your second love language. You can make a list of all the gifts your spouse has expressed excitement about receiving through the years. The list will give you kind of an idea of the kind of gifts that your spouse enjoys receiving. You see, almost everything ever written on the subject of love indicates that the heart of love is the spirit of giving. All 5 love languages challenge us to give to our spouse, but for some, receiving gifts, and that is visible symbols, speaks loudest than anything else. Now let's move to the 4th love language, and that is acts of service. Acts of service means doing things you know your spouse would like you to do. Cooking a meal, cleaning the house, taking her car for washing, doing the laundry, washing dishes, all these are acts of service. Learning the love language of acts of service will require some of us to re-examine our stereotypes of the roles of husbands and wives. Well, from my part of the world, I have observed that wives are the ones who are expected to do the household chores. Most wives are the ones who clean the house, do the cooking and the dishes, they wash the kids, they do everything that needs to be done in the house. When Janet married my cousin, she seemed to be bothered with doing all the chores by herself. She complained all the time about how selfish he is, how he acts as if husband shouldn't do anything around. And here my cousin was working so hard and bringing a fat salary home, buying her all the expensive gifts any woman could dream of, taking her in all the expensive holidays. But this complaining went on and on and on until my cousin read the 5 love languages, and then he started helping out with the dishes in the evening. And that is how he entered into his wife's heart, because he was learning to speak her primary love language, and that is acts of service. People tend to criticize their spouse most loudly in the area where they themselves have the deepest emotional need. My advice is get into a habit of asking your spouse, "What can I do for you? Is there anything I can help you with this?" Do this often and see how your relationship improves. Acts of service require thought, planning, time, effort, and energy, but if done with a positive spirit, they are indeed expressions of love. Now let's move to the 5th love language, and that is physical touch. We have long known that physical touch is a way of communicating emotional love. Numerous research projects have in the area of child development reached the conclusion that babies who are held, hugged, and kissed develop a healthier emotional life than those who are left for a long period without being touched physically. Physical touch is also a powerful vehicle of communicating marital love. Holding, kissing, embracing, and sexual intercourse are all ways to communicate emotional love. For some people, physical touch is a primary love language. With it, they feel loved and cared for. Without it, they feel insecure in the love of their spouse. I feel personally that this is an area where most black people are deficient in, and this is just in general on average. Well, I remember being told over and over again that I shouldn't carry my baby in my arms for too long because she'll get used to being held and she'll cry when she's put down. And I am talking about a baby who was just a few days old. Even with our parents, you'll never believe that they are lovers. They behave like they are just, I don't know. And I'm not exaggerating when I say you'll see a couple of 20 years that would never hug in front of their children. If they're walking together from wherever, there's always a 1 meter distance between them. Whereas our Caucasian friends on average are doing a little bit better in this area of physical touch. You see them in the mall holding hands, hugging, kissing their family members. Even in church, I once saw a man who had his arm around his wife for the entire time in the church service. If your spouse's primary love language is physical touch, then nothing is more important to them than when you hold them. Your words will mean very little, but with a physical touch, it will communicate that you love them and you care. If your spouse's primary love language is physical touch, as you walk from the car to go shopping, reach out and hold your spouse's hand. While eating together, let your knee or your foot drift over and touch your spouse. When you have family and friends visit your house, touch your spouse in their presence, putting your arm around him as you stand talking, or simply placing your hand on his shoulder says, even with all these people in our house, I still see you. When your spouse arrives at home, meet him or her one step earlier than usual and give your mate a big welcome home. The point is to vary the routine and enhance. Even a small touch will give you a much bigger improvement in your relationship. Now that you have heard of the 5 love languages, discovering the primary love language of your spouse is essential if you are to keep the emotional love tank full. But first, make sure that you know your own love language. And the question that you need to ask yourself is, what makes you feel loved the most by your spouse? Obviously, we all want to be appreciated, we want to be complimented all the time, receiving gifts, spending quality time with our spouse, and have them help us with the chores around the house and have a good physical contact. But what do you desire above all else? What speaks loudest to you? Is it words of affirmation? Is it quality time? Is it receiving of gifts? Is it acts of service or physical touch? You can comment down below and we can have a nice chat on the 5 love languages. Now, thank you so much for watching this video. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If there's any book you want me to read, please also comment down below. Continue to live an intentional life.